All right, now we're going to be working with this top page. This is the answer that I've got here. And we're going to get the list of top 10 stores based on their average rating. So, this is going to get a little bit complex because how do you query stores based on something that each store doesn't even have? We have reviews and we have stores. And they're kind of related because we have those fields, but we don't actually have the data of reviews in the stores. So what we need to do, and this is a perfect use case for an aggregation. Remember, an aggregation is what you use in MongoDB whenever you need to do either multi-stepped or very complex queries. So in this case, we want to grab a list of all of our stores, populate their ratings, and then find out what the average rating of that actual store is. But then I also don't want to show stores that only have one rating because one person could rate it 5 stars and it'll go right to the top, right? So let's open up or let's go back to our actual application here. Click on top. We got a 404, so we'll go to our index.js and we'll make a route for that top. So I'll go down to here. So router.get /top. And when that happens, we're going to catch the errors and we'll use our store controller, get top stores. Okay. Then we'll open up our store controller here. Go down to the bottom. Exports.get top stores is equal to async request response. I feel really sad. This is the last method we're going to be building together. And then you're a little butterfly out on your own. So here we go. So we're going to say const stores is equal to await store dot. Oh, what do I do here? Find? No. What we're going to do is we're going to make up a new method called get top stores. Then we're going to render out a top stores.pug file. Then the stores are going to be passed, and the title is going to be top stores. Okay, so this get top stores right here. How do we actually do that? Well, as a general rule of thumb, anytime I have a complex query, it's not great to do that inside of your controller. It's best to put that on the model itself. It's fine to do like a find. You have a couple little queries here and there. But whenever we're going to get into like 7, 8 lines of querying in our aggregation, I like to stick that in my model. Keep it as close to the model as you can without making it like a rule that you follow blindly. So we'll open up our store model, store.js, and we'll go down to the bottom. You see here we have store schema.static.get tags list. That's exactly what we're going to be doing. But we're going to be getting one called get top store. So we can put it below, and the order here doesn't really matter, but as long as you have it on before you create your model. So say store schema dot statics dot get top stores. That's equal to function, proper function, because we're going to need this in just a second. Open that up. Now, from that, we are going to return this dot aggregate and pass it an array. So what that will do is, aggregate is like a query function. It's much like .find, except we can do much more complex stuff inside of it. And by returning that means it's going to return the promise so that we can await the result of get top stores and put it into our actual variable there. So that's why we have that. Now, I'm going to paste in some things that we need to do here because I want to like get an idea of what we're doing beforehand rather than just blindly following me typing. So paste this in. First, what we want to do is look up stores and populate their reviews. Okay, so first thing first is that we can't actually use our virtual reviews here because this virtual reviews is a Mongoose specific thing. And this aggregate is not Mongoose specific. It just passes it right through to MongoDB. So sort of a downside to some of these convenience methods in Mongoose is that you can't use them every possible place because if you're doing something like aggregate, it doesn't know about, this is a lower level MongoDB function. It doesn't know about these higher level Mongoose things. It's just MongoDB. So we need to do something similar to what we did here with our virtual, but we need to look up the stores. Then once we have a list of stores, which each store has their reviews populated, we want to filter for stores that only have 2 or more reviews, right? So we first need to get the stores, then populate the reviews, then figure out if they have 2 or more reviews, because we don't want to show stores that have 1 review. Then we want to add a new field called average reviews, because we don't know what the average review is of each store. And that's something that needs to be calculated on the fly. And that's exactly what aggregation is for. Finally, we want to sort by our new field, highest reviews first. So we want to put the people with the highest review at the top. And then finally, if we have more than 10, we'll limit it to actually having 10. So you see sort of what an aggregation is for, many steps of a complex query. So first thing first, each one of these steps is going to be an object. So first one we want to do is called a lookup, and a lookup will populate a field that is sort of like our virtuals. So we want to look up from reviews, and I'll talk about that in a second. Our local field is going to be the ID. Our foreign field is store, just like we did down here. And we're going to say as reviews, and that's what the actual field is going to be called. So that's pretty much the same thing here. We made a field called reviews where we have a foreign field and a local field. The only difference here is that our from is reviews, and down here we did ref equals capital R reviews. And this took me the longest time to figure out. I was like, where is this coming from? I was looking at all these examples and I don't understand. Like, this is nowhere in my actual review model. But what actually happens is that MongoDB will lowercase it and put an S on the end for you. So it will take your model name, which is capital R review, and it will lowercase it and add an S onto the end. So just so you know that's something that tripped me up for a while. The comma, that's the first thing. Actually, we can sort of like follow along as we're doing this. So let's save that so far. And let's go. Oh, I have a bit of an error here. Our lookup needs to be an object in itself. This stuff sometimes gets a little bit hairy. If it's looking a little bit complicated for you, you can put it on its own line where the lookup has its own values being pulled in, but I can put it on its own line. So we have two objects, the first one being the aggregation line, and then we look up, and then we pass it a second object for the lookup. So give that a save. We'll go back to our store controller here, and instead of rendering, let's just do a JSON so we can see if our stores are working. There we go. Now what we have here is we've got a ton of data being passed back, but we have a list of all of our stores, and each store has a reviews field, which has a list of all of the reviews for that specific store, right? And that's exactly what this is. As I could say, as Wes is cool. And now the field is actually called Wes is cool because I did it like that. So that's how we name what the field is. This is where we get it from, capital R review. And then this is how we link the two. So what we did there is we took two separate documents, our store documents and our reviews documents, and we merged them together. Now what we want to do is take this data and whittle it down a little bit because we don't want everything. We just want to filter for items that only have two or more reviews. So we're going to use a match in the next one. So make sure you put a comma after that last one. $match. So out of this last one, we're piping it in here, and we're going to whittle it down by matching, which is an object, only ones that have a reviews.one and another object here. We're going to say exists is true. So what? So we're going to match documents where reviews.one, this is how you access things that are index based in MongoDB. So reviews.0 would be the first thing, reviews.one. I know we don't have that in JavaScript, but that's how we do it in MongoDB. So we want to say like where the second item in reviews exists is true. And what that will do is it'll just whittle it down. So places that only have one review will be totally taken out of it. So here, this one has absolutely no reviews. Most of them actually have no reviews. We'll look at populating some extra data in just a second. So give that a save. And now I've only got this one store coming back because that's all the actual data we have. So we need to pause this for just a second because we need more data. And remember, we had this file here in our data folder called load sample data. What we can do now is we can go back and load in, uncomment these 1, 2, 3, and 4. Sorry, at the top, there's a fourth one. So uncomment those 4 things we commented out previously. And let's go back to our terminal here, kill it, and we're going to run the script. Well, let's look at our package.json. We're going to run the script, blow it all away, because that's going to delete all of our current stores and load in some new ones. So npm run blow it all away. And that deleted all of our data. So now we should have no actual data. Go back to MongoDB and refresh this. There are no reviews. There are no stores. There are no users. Then we can run our data, which is called sample, npm run sample. That loaded a whole bunch of data in for us. I'm going to clear it out. npm start once more. And now if I refresh this page, we're getting all kinds of data coming back. And you can also see if you go to the actual website, we got all of our stores back. And then each of our stores should now have a bunch of, here we go, bunch of reviews being popped up in the bottom as we see it there. Good. So we have some data. Let's go back to that endpoint, which is /top. Let's keep working on our aggregation here in store.js. We want to add a new field for the average rating. So that's like we don't have an actual average rating just yet. In order for us to sort by the average rating, that field needs to be correct. That field needs to be created first. So give yourselves a object here. And we are going to use the project. And what does project? Project means essentially like add a field to the actual one. There's a little bit of a downside to this, and I'll explain that in just a second. So we are going to project, and this is going to be an object itself. Put it on its own line here. And we're going to project a average rating property. And the value of that is going to be set to the average AVG of $reviews.rating. So what it's saying here is that create a new field called average rating and set the value of that to be the average of each of the reviews rating field. And it's going to do the actual math for us. The same, we also have sum, as we have all these operators that will do math against fields. And the $ means that it is a field from the data being piped in. In our case, it's being piped in from our match. So if I give that a refresh, we should see average rating show up now. There we go. We've got average rating 5, 1, 3, 4, 2, 3. But what happened to the rest of our data? Now, this is a weird thing about aggregations is currently I'm actually running MongoDB 3.2 in MLab. Here I've got my MLab open, and I was just showing you here, when you create a new sandbox, at least when I'm recording this, I don't have a MongoDB version 3.4. And version 3.4 will just have this thing called add field. And then that's all you need. And it's going to take your existing document and just add a new field to it, right? But with MongoDB 3.2, if you're on that version, and the way you can tell what version you're on is you can always go to your MongoDB compass, and it will tell you what version of MongoDB you're on, say 3.2.1.2. So what can we do about this? Well, we can either upgrade to MongoDB 3.4, or if you're on MLab and you don't have that option just yet, or maybe it is by the time you're watching this, we have to go back to project, and you have to add all the fields back in that you explicitly want. So that's fine because we only need a couple of pieces here. We need the photo, we need the name, we need the reviews, or at least a count of the reviews, and that's it. So we can do that, no problem. We'll say photo is equal to, and here you can take the $root variable, which is going to be, that's going to be equal to the original document dot photo. And there we go. There's our photo is back. And then we what else do we need? We need the name, and we need the reviews, and we need the reviews. And there we go. We've got our ID always comes with you, the name, the photo, a list of reviews, and our average rating. So we just sort of like created our own new document, and that's exactly what aggregations are for. So we've got that up and running. Next, we need to sort it by our new field. So again, put a comma after the last one, give yourself a new object, and we are going to sort based on what? Well, it's going to be average rating. Why? Because that's our last one. And then you either tell it -1 or 1. So we want -1 because we want to go highest to lowest. Now at the top, our average rating is 5 right here. Go all the way to the bottom. Our average rating is 1.6. So we've got those. And then finally limit this to at most 10. Why? Because how many items are coming back? We got 1, 2, 3, 4. We got a lot, 15 or so. So we want to limit it to at most 10. So again, we'll pipe it in to our next operator, limit to 10. That one luckily doesn't have a nested object in it. Now we're getting 10 back. You can test that by make it 1. You see you only get 1 back. So this will give us at least, or at the most, 10. Good. So that was a massive aggregation that we have used here. We had to do some weird stuff around project, but if you are on MongoDB version 3.4, you can just use add field and not have to do any of these extra 3 lines of code here. Good. Then we'll go back into our store controller, and we don't actually want to JSON it. We want to render out top stores, which we're going to make a new view for it called top stores.pug, capital S. We'll give ourselves our inner. We will give ourselves H2. And we'll say top, how many stores? Well, we can interpolate this data here. We just take the number of stores and get the length stores. Give that a save. Now when we refresh this page, we see top 10 stores. And if we were to change the amount of stores that were coming back, limit it to 5, it should just update this to top 5 stores. Beautiful. And that will also work if you only actually have 6 stores in your database. It's only going to give you 6. So we have our top stores. Then we need to actually code up a table here. So table.table. We need a table head. It's been years since I've coded a table. And we need a photo, a ranking, a name, a number of reviews, and an average rating. Okay, those don't need to all be on their own line. And each of them is going to be a TD. Then we can loop over each of the stores here. So each store I in store. So in this case, we also need the index. So we say store comma I, and it's going to give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And for each of those, we need a table row and then a TD. Inside of that, we need an image with a width of 200. The source of, again, we'll do our uploads. You could probably make a nice little helper. We've coded this whole uploads thing a couple times. It'd be nice to have a helper function to do this for us rather than have to code it every single time in our template. Store.photo or store.png. And then the alt of that will be the store.name. So let's give that a save, refresh. We got our top 10 stores being piped in here. And if you inspect it, it's going to alt chart. It's giving our actual photo. Good. So we've got that up and running. Now feel free to pause the video and just do the rest yourself. It's simply just templating out some data. So our TD is going to be equal to, our TD will have the I, but if we just use I, it's going to actually start at 0. So it's ranking 0, and we actually want it to start at 1. We'll index it by 1. We have a TD inside of that. We have an A. And by the way, if you do this, like TD colon, you're able to do it on one line. Otherwise, you have to indent it like that. So TD colon A. The ref is going to be equal to /stores / the store dot slug. Again, you could also make that a nice little helper function that would generate the URL given the store slug. And then inside of that, we'll have the store name. Looking good, looking good. Finally, we have a TD, which is going to have the store.average rating inside of it. That's not going to do much for us, but we can see, look, it's good. But like the problem is that when we have like values that look like this, so what we need to do is to round it, and so that we can get something like 4.3 out of 5. So how do we do that? Well, wrap that whole thing in math.round, multiply that by 10, then divide it by 10, and what will that give us? There we go, 4.3. So what we did was we just bumped up the decimal, rounded it, then bumped down the decimal, and we get a nice little quick number. And then we can just put a out of 5 on the end to show us what we've got. Good. So we have all this up and running. Click it. We probably should wrap our image tag in a link as well. So we'll do TD A ref from the other one. Oh no! What did I do? Maybe I can't mix these. So TDA image all nested inside. There we go. Now when I click on one of them, oh no, it doesn't put in the store slug. Oh, why is that? When you click on them, we get undefined because we didn't ask for the store slug when we made our aggregation. Remember, we had this problem here. We also need to ask for the slug value. And then I click on one, and I got the French. Oh, and finally, I'm messing up all over the place. I think it's S and S. Again, if I had a nice little helper function for that, I wouldn't screw that up every single time that I actually wrote it. There we go. We actually get to see what chart looks like. Good. So that is our actual aggregation for the top stores. Really, the last thing that we want to do here is also when somebody views a store, we want to show them how many reviews are on that specific store. If we open up our store card, pug, and we're looking for something like this. This is the answer here. If it has 4 reviews, I want it to show a little 4 right beside it, et cetera, et cetera. So if we open up our store card.pug and we do a quick dump of our store, you'll see that each of the stores actually doesn't have a reviews. It's set to null. And the reason is because we have not yet called populate on every single time that we want it. So we could go back to our store controller and look for get stores. And you see that we have store.find, and we could call a .populate on the end. We ask for reviews field to be populated. Now, if I refresh that, all of the reviews are being populated, no problem. You see, bok, 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 all of these things. But I don't feel like doing that every single time that I need it. So we could use our auto populate function that we've done for our other one. So we'll go into our store.js. We will make a function called auto populate. Next, and we'll say this dot populate. What do we want to populate? The reviews. Call next, and then we take our schema and we run our hooks. So we'll say store schema dot pre find. We're going to auto populate, and then we also want to do it when we do find one. And that means whenever I query a store, it should also populate all the reviews for that store. There we go, showing up just fine. Go back to our store card here. You get rid of that dump. And we'll go down here. We have our store card heart. We have our store card edit. Let's do another one down here. We'll say if store.reviews, store action count. And we'll do another one of those h.icon. We look for the review icon. And below that, we'll just give ourselves a span with the store.reviews.length. So the number of reviews that are specifically on that. So give that a refresh. There we go. Now we see the number of reviews popping up for every single one of our reviews. And if we go to our tags page and click on any of the tags, you see how that's always getting populated regardless of what query you're doing. We didn't have to update 6 or 7 queries. It's just going to be auto-populated every single time.